So first of all, welcome everyone. I know you've all probably had a busy day working, and now you've been asked at short notice to attend a meeting, and you may not even be wondering what on earth is this meeting about. So just a huge thank you for you for attending. Just to clarify, this webinar is going to be a rapid review of the Community Pharmacy Consultation Service as it's been rolled out in the Ealing Borough. But we're also going to do a huge section on NHSmail tips. So it's really two things together. Now that may seem really rushed and busy, so please don't panic. One of the aims is that this is going to be recorded, slides will be shared, and you can work at your own speed. I would also like to say that, we'd obviously want it to be really interactive, but we are limited because of the number of people that could be on this webinar. So please use the chat function to pose your questions, voice your thoughts. I'm not doing this alone. So in the team here, we've got Sarah from Medicines Management. So this is our Ealing Borough, part of North West London CCG. So she's part of the team that's assisting here. So she'll be here monitoring chat and hopefully answering some queries. We've got Finn, who's a practice manager, so she's here helping, and we've got Jane, who's again part of the Ealing Borough North West London team, who's helping recording and doing everything as usual. But apart from us in the CCG side, we're supported by members that you probably already know, so we don't need introductions. We've got membership from LPC and some of your PCN representatives as well. So I know we can't do a round of huge interruptions, but just understand that that's a team behind this. Okay, so I'm aiming to do this in a roughly around half an hour, which is an extremely fast pace. I apologise in advance, but we're happy to overrun afterwards for questions. But I just wanted to give the flexibility if people have to dash off that we try to go relatively fast. So use the chat function, voice your thoughts and your concerns. So we're breaking this into two sections. What would the referral process for CPCS look like for Ealing? Why on earth is this method being considered? It's a method using NHSmail. And what would be the next steps that we would need to do to make this work? Then the second part of this webinar is an opportunistic thing. This builds on the use of NHSmail. What are the tips that we could share that mean that we all use NHSmail more effectively? Right, so let's kick off. I'm not going to explain about CPCS. I think there's lots more resources, and you'll probably know even more than I do about some of this. But in a nutshell, obviously launched in 2019, and the key things that I want to is those messages in red. There's two aims: integration of community pharmacies into PCNs, promoting shared working. So I would like us to think of this as a journey of us working closer together, and that this webinar is part of that journey. Sarah from our medicines management team suggested that this might be a useful resource. So in your pharmacy, if you actually have staff or team that need to learn more about CPCS or what does it actually involve, this is a free webinar which is supported by, I think, the Royal Pharmaceutical Society and the Royal College of GPs together. So I think it's centrally funded, so you don't pay anything, and you book it online. From what I understand, it comes up to about two hour sessions. Is it about 4 hours in total? Could I welcome that if anyone's actually used this, got any feedback from it, maybe post your comments in the chat so it could help other people on this webinar. So why are we talking about CPS for general practice now? Well, another document from NHS England landed last winter, like a couple of months ago, really talking about winter access funds, additional support for general practice, and that practices might be able to apply or benefit from additional funds to help with the pressures of not just COVID, but everything else during the winter. One of the conditions was that general practice had to engage in using CPCS. So this is one of the factors why right now we're keen to mobilise it, keen to get people going, because general practice are aware of this this requirement. So what's happened in Ealing? Well, the credit goes to a few practices, a few pharmacies who really did this all on their own. So they're on the call. I'll let them maybe to say what they feel in the chat. But they did this on their own. We didn't help them from the CCG end. They started to just mobilise it. They kept asking us as a CCG to support them, but we were stuck with COVID pandemic stuff and we didn't. And they just shared us their learning about that they could make it work. And the method of referral is really built on what they did and why they did it. But when we try to mobilise CPCS, these are the sort of the concerns that practices and our PCN leads would raise. Why do we have to make a referral? Surely patients can just walk into pharmacies and at the self-care centre. Our receptionists are too busy. It's difficult multitasking, juggling the phones, emails. It's just relentless. How can they do another extra step? Patients will come back to us because it's quicker to or cheaper to just get it on prescription and pain. Worry that pharmacists would send a lot of patients back to the GP and then it just wouldn't help anyone and would feel just like a lot of hassle. So these are sort of the mindsets, the concerns that practices raised. I'm definitely not saying that any of this is right, but that is just our starting point for what the journey we've had to do. So how did we tackle this? We got feedback from those pilots. We got those practices to really share their thoughts, and you can see two strong comments here. We had what we call a council members meeting with all our practices where we shared this. We got some additional feedback from some of the GPs in those practices saying, look, we just didn't find a huge number of patients coming back to us asking for it on prescription, or we just didn't find that lots of patients were sent back to us from our pharmacists. So it kind of supported that pilot data. So it built a momentum. There's a change in that general practice feeling about CPCS. So they obviously felt that they have to do it now, but they now understand from the pilots, well, look, it's actually could be a good thing. So it challenged some of those concerns I expressed earlier. So what have we done for our general practice? So exactly like this webinar, we did one for our practices back in December, a few weeks ago, and we ran through the process. Now, I want to show you a bits of what we taught them or explained to them so you can have confidence about what the general practice is doing and actually why is it that we want to use NHSmail for referral. So first of all, we explained to them who to refer. We made it really clear this is for over 1-year-olds, minor, mild conditions, and that they have to think about red flags. And we gave them like a list of sort of the common problems, which again is using some of the national templates. So you've probably all seen this. We really walked through this chart. And I know it may have seemed really complex or busy, but when I look at that red side on the right, I summarize it as, look, if this is severe, if this has been going on for a long time, this is probably not right for CPCS. Now, some pharmacists said to us, surely, the referrals need to come from a clinician, that, receptionists can't do this. Well, I'll just say a couple of things. If from general practice, a patient had to then have a consultation with a GP or a nurse, usually they'll just feel like they have to just complete that whole encounter. Even if it was a minor condition, we'd probably manage it, tell them what to buy, prescribe it. We just wouldn't be motivated to then make an onward referral to you in pharmacy. It just would feel like we've already started, let's complete it. But then I think we can't underestimate what receptionists do day in, day out. Every day, patients are contacting them, asking for it from the GP. They're making a decision. Can this wait for 2 weeks? Can this wait for tomorrow? Can this be seen? Does it need to be seen now? And even when I say see it now, is that usually by the end of the day? So if we think of CPCS as a same-day service, actually the risk is relatively low, because even if something didn't go quite right, if we all give worsening advice, if it had to be redirected, we haven't added massive delays compared to what the receptionist is just doing every day, day in, day out. So I just want to give you that sense check of perspective, but we completely understand we need to highlight this component. So what else did we explain? We emphasise to them that you have to make a referral. This is not just self-direction, but we also explained about the selection process. So we made it clear that we can't influence the choice of pharmacy. If the patient has a nominated pharmacy, we mention that pharmacy choice first, and if not, the receptionist just offers the 2 closest pharmacies to their preferred location. So we totally understand the dynamics commercially between you all, and we just wanted to make it clear that that is our role. And we wanted to tighten up that training for receptionists. We also tried to guide them about how they might have to speak about the service. What would they explain? How would they promote it to their patients? And then we explained about the referral process. And now this is a discussion for all of us here. So there is a national toolkit. It makes it extremely clear. There is a referral option via NHSmail, and there's a referral option via IT platforms. And when we talk about IT platforms, probably the two that we all probably know most about are Pharma Outcomes and Sony Informatics. Now, I completely respect that as pharmacists, you may feel that Pharma Outcomes as Sony Informatics might be the preferred platforms. It could make your life easier. You're not entering data, you're not moving data around. Now, I just want you to bear with me. We understand that frustration. I'm going to try and show you why this works better for the GP practice initially, and then how we can work together to look at those options in the longer term. Because if you look at this, if there are concerns by the practice about, CPS, I feel skeptical. If we also had to try and train our receptionists to understand another platform where they're juggling so many things, we think the reality is they're just not going to engage. You'll just be looking at your thinking, why are we not getting any referrals? How do we make this improve? Whereas if we actually get them using a system they feel comfortable and familiar with, we're not adding too much complexity. Once we all get going and we're building on the service, we can review the options. This is also not great timing in the middle of a pandemic to do large scale training. So it's just like everything, if it's one extra click, does it mean that people just don't feel they want to do it? Because this is really in the hearts of the receptionists. They're the ones that are going to be critical to make this work or not. But there's other platforms. It's about interoperability with the GP system too. So let me just explain this a bit. So based on that discussion, like I've just said, we've thought we're mobilizing with a emailed referral form which is built into the GP system, but that we look at, in the longer term, about across North West London, what platform do we use? And when I say longer term, it may be over the coming months, so I'm not saying years. And then we look at our options again. So that's why we've contacted all of you, asked you to verify your NHSmail addresses, and that's why we're doing this webinar tonight. And then the final bit is, there's this need in the toolkit that you send a message back to the practice, but with an outcome of the consultation. Now, I know that that's another bit of workload that you feel is hassle. If you look at the toolkit, it really emphasizes that, at the beginning, we all should be doing this, but over time we can have conversations as PCNs about, do we always need to send a feedback back? Is it just too much noise? Is it little benefit? But that is just the journey that we're outlining today. So this is how the referral form looks. I know this is like small on your screen. You may not think it's clear. We're going to touch on this a bit later on as well. But in a nutshell, the top section shows where the referral is going to, which pharmacy, the patient's details, the GP practice details, what's the problem. We've made sure that safety checklist is built into the form so that receptionists just can't miss it. And the last bit at the bottom is the post-event message that a pharmacist could complete. Now, we've emailed this out to you as a demo dummy form by the Medicines Runner team, so hopefully you've all got it and seen it. If not, we can definitely send it out again. So I just want you to see the GP side of this. So this is SystmOne. All of our Ealing practices, apart from one, uses clinical system. So when that receptionist is on the phone using the system, they can use a drop-down list and they quickly see the community pharmaceutical option. They click it. It pops out a box that we built that again shows them the conditions and the red flags. They tick one box about what's the problem, and then they search an address book that we've built into SystmOne. So we've taken all your pharmacy email address, everything you've verified, and we've put it into our SystmOne address book. So it's built in. We'll come back to why that's really important in a moment. So they click, they can search based on name, they can search based on postcode, they can search based on here, Ealing CPS, but they quickly search for your pharmacy. They'll probably learn the quickest way to find the most common pharmacies that they're referring most of their patients to, but that's how that works. When they click that, it opens up that referral form, it fills in all those boxes for them. All they need to do, actually, they probably don't even need to fill in anything because it's been auto-filled, but they just save it. And really importantly, in the clinical record of that patient, it now has coded that referral has been made, and it actually starts to even put a code about what is the problem they've been coded for. So this is one advantage that doesn't come from using other pharma outcomes or phone platforms, that if the patient called back the practice later on that day, everyone can see what was going on, that the reception made a referral. But anyway, moving on. So then they click a box and they have to click that choice of reception, that pharmacist again, but which seems like a bit confusing why they have to do that twice, but believe me, it's quite quick, and it gives them a confirmation message. Do you sure you want to send it to that pharmacy? And they click yes. They save the record and they get this message saying it will be sent now that they've saved the record. Now, all of that process for that busy receptionist does not mean logging into another platform, being trained to it, juggling sometimes multiple interruptions at the same time. They can be focused, and it's using systems that are familiar to them. So it reduces that barrier of reluctance for them to do it, and it speeds up the training curve. So if you look at that, how that works in the GP side, the most critical thing here is we have to get your details correct on that address book of your NHSmail address that we're using. And if you change it, you've got to notify us, and you've got to email our service desk to say, please update the address book with the changes. And this is our Ealing Borough team contact details. Let us know as well. So that's the first alert of what could go wrong. And that's why we spent so much time working with you to check what we're doing is correct. The second thing I would say is, suppose as a pharmacist you had a really bad day, all your staff were off with COVID, you just felt you could not have any capacity to offer CPS that day. Do you want to send an email to your local practice to inform them? And your email address, do you want to change your auto reply to just mention this? Now, I'll explain this later on in this webinar in the NHSmail tips about how you can do that. But let's see at your end what happens. So the referral comes in as an email. So it may look something like this. So it's got the patient details in the body of the email, and there's a Word document attachment. So it may not even be absolutely clear that this is a CPCS referral. You open up the attachment, and there is that form we mentioned. So this is page 1. So just that, sorry, the top of page 1. So the patient details, practice details. This is the bottom of page 1. So it just shows the problem. So this is Minnie Mouse, if you didn't spot, and her problem was back pain after lifting lots of cheese. And then that second page, the top of the second page is just that box, which was that reminder for the reception staff. And the bottom of the second page is really the box that interests you. So this shows, what you might want to complete. So the, when did you see the patient? What was the history of the problem, the support you gave, the medication advice, and follow-up required. So that's that bit that ideally you would complete and return back. Now, this is where it does get fiddly. This Word document is locked. You can't just simply type into this and email it back. Now, I've done a video which explains how you can edit it and email this form back. Now, this is a 6-7 minute video. I'm not suggesting we look at this together now. I'm also not even suggesting that you'll do this. But what I am suggesting is please, please, please do not think you need to print off the form, handwrite it, scan it, and email it back. I know that some pharmacies are doing that or thought about doing it. This is a tip that will just save you all that time. Once you learn it, it'll make it a lot quicker, and none of us can read handwriting well. I mean, you probably know that. Us doctors in particular, you've got no hope of reading my handwriting. But anyway, that's a video link that you can look at in your own time. But you could just reply back to that email. You've got the email sitting back, you just reply back, clarify the date, put that information in your body of the email. The patient's details are still in that email that was sent from the practice. So that is a quick option. You're busy, understand that. That's an option that can be done. So what are the next steps for pharmacies and practices to do this? Well, look, we've done, really it's cascade training, isn't it? We've done webinars for the practices. They have to cascade it with themselves, the reception team. If we do in your pharmacy teams, all your locums or your other pharmacists, your tech team, just they understand some of these principles. Everyone has to talk to each other. That was that aim of CPCS, that we work closely together. So we've all got to keep a dialogue engaged, talk what we're doing. And then look, there will be issues, there will be feedback. You may be a pharmacist that finds that your GP's practices near you are just not doing this. You may be the other way around, that GP practices report their pharmacist not doing it. There may be some teething problems, miscommunication. So, we have to have those discussions and shared learning at multiple levels. So at practice level, pharmacy level, PCN, CG. So we're really happy to facilitate those discussions. Now, I know that's a whistle-stop tour. That's taken us about 15 minutes to run through that, and that may be really fast-paced. I'm going to genuinely suggest that if we could pause for a couple of burning questions, if there are any. So I'm going to look for a steer from my colleagues if they think there are some burning questions. Otherwise, the second part is just, again, a run-through of NHSmail tips, and then we can take further questions at the end. So I'm just going to pause for any burning issues at this stage. Are there any? Or shall I just carry on?
There was only one question in the chat, Shankar, but Finn's answered it, so I think that's fine. It was just about farm outcomes and whether it was going to be used by practices across London, but Finn's explained.
Yeah, so just repeat that conversation. So that product is not centrally funded. It is not bought by NHS England or anyone. So it's a products that we can buy. So there's lots of questions, aren't there? There'll be, well, first of all, who pays for it? who supports the training, which product do you pick, and then all those cross-boundary issues, where do you draw the line, London, how do we do this? So even if we all wanted to use a product, I think we could all agree that it's going to take time to reach that outcome. And if we don't want to add delay to this process, this is another reason why we're encouraging the use of this referral route now. Because if we build the process, we understand CPS, we always start using it. Later down the line, we're not having to we're not having to explain to receptionists, oh, what is this IT tool that we want you to learn about? So hopefully that makes it clear, but we can pick this up again at the end. Okay, if that's the last, if that's the question, yeah.
Shankar, Sanjay has asked, it may be useful to explain the pharmacy and process once we get referral and how to claim.
Yeah. Now, okay, so I genuinely, when we did this webinar, we actually did scope this in this concept, and we thought that would be outside of this particular meeting, and because our remit as a CCG is that we're not here to commission your service. So we thought that either from your PCNs or your LPC, if they need to facilitate another discussion about the contract about CPS so you can understand it, that would be the right space to do it in. Can I suggest at the end, if we all want to hang on, and if there's some questions about that LPC and Sanjay or the others can help with, that might be a useful way to start that conversation. Okay, if that's okay, I'm going to now do a whistle spot. Now, this is going to go even faster. So before you get annoyed, think of this as a recording that you can run by your own time. And I'm just going to whiz you through some of this so you just know that it exists. So I want to show you some tips. Now, I'm basing these tips on my own experience of pharmacies. That, as a GP, when I see the emails come in and out, I'm a sessional GP. I work across Ealing, so I've seen lots of different experiences, and this is over the years. I appreciate whatever I say may not be representative for everyone. That some of you may be doing all of this and you're now going to be bored for the next 10 minutes. And if you want to sleep, absolutely fine. For some of you, you may feel that this is all new and you need time to look at it. Okay. So first thing is this web link. I think Michael left and sort of flagged some of these things, but this website, I looked at it today and I just thought, wow, it's amazing. It really answers all the top queries. So if you look at this web page and go through, you'll probably find most of the top things that you might want to answer there. So I just want to highlight a couple of things at this stage. There is that dedicated NHSmail desk, help desk for pharmacists support email address. For CPCS, we've been telling that we need to use your pharmacist shared NHSmail address. That's a general principle that we use as a CCG. We don't use individual personal NHSmail addresses for sending referrals because that person could be on leave, they could be sick. We just don't have that robustness of that. And I know that the size of organisation forms part of that decision making. But if you look through this web page, you can see that you can get all your staff to have access to a shared mailbox, and you can get the best of both outcomes. But please do not give your staff your own personal NHSmail login details. We are aware that some pharmacists do, and we just can't support that at this stage because of all the issues about information governance. So use your shared NHS mailbox. Another thing, I've seen pharmacies, they have Google Gmail set up in their phone. They take photographs of patients' prescription requests. They then forward it to the NHSmail, then forward it to the practice. And you look at the trial and go, oh, God, it started in Google. Don't do that. It's quite easy just to put NHSmail into your phones. And again, if you look at this web page, it will walk you through that. So, if you're thinking you don't have time as busy pharmacists checking your NHSmail, just make sure you're using all your functionality. Is it in your phone? Is it on your Outlook? How can you make this quicker and easier for you? So let's walk through NHSmail very quickly with those tips. So, this is the web page browser login. So we log in, we type in our details. And then, at the top right, you can go to open other mailbox, and that's when you can type in your shared mailbox address. So hopefully that's kind of obvious. So your staff could get through from their own personal NHSmail and then be set up to open up your shared mailbox this way through. There's other ways you can do it. Some of you may have shared mailboxes, NHSmail addresses that you can log in directly, but this is just step one approach to this. So that's the first thing, and I hope that's not too obvious. Now, let's look at settings. So if you go to that, if we click on that sort of cogwheel at the top and we click on the bottom, we start to go to the settings. And this is the first thing I'd like to show you, automatic replies. So we just click on automatic replies and you can see this box that says turn on automatic replies, and it's like a toggle switch. It's on the off position. So we can just click on it to turn it right. And then it gives you sort of a couple of options. You can put in some text or message for if you get emails from within your organization, and you can also put in a message, an auto reply for outside your organization. And if you scroll down, you can then see that bottom section of that window, which is for outside your organization. So for example, today, I was on leave yesterday, I could do an auto reply that says to everyone that I'm on leave till tomorrow. And then once you do, you set it, you save it. Now, I'm not a pharmacist. This is just something I've come up with today as an idea. What could your pharmacist auto reply message be? The things that are really helpful is sometimes confirm your identity. So if you get if a practice or someone's contacted you, they know that they've contacted the right place, so it's helpful. Tell them your hours that you're checking your mailbox. Maybe your email address might be patients might use it. They might find it. They may be messaging you about repeat prescriptions, chasing things. So maybe put a disclaimer about if a patient tried to contact you about an urgent problem, and that's an example. Obviously, you don't need to. You could ignore that completely. So that's the first tip. Now we're going to talk email signatures, and it's based on the same principle. So before I go on to that, actually, if I go back to, we just recommend you keep your auto reply on constantly, just 24/7. It's always on, never turn it off, even when you're in work. And going back to that contingency plan, if you had a bad day, you couldn't do CPCS referrals, I'm asking, do you tweak your auto reply message? Do you communicate that you've got a problem in your pharmacy so that everyone gets aware as soon as possible? Email signatures. So again, if you go to settings, email, compose and reply, you can click on new signatures and you can set up a message, a signature for new messages and replies. So that means when you send an email, automatically pre-fills it with some information. And again, this is an example, you can ignore it or you do it with it. Look at the bottom, just a disclaimer. What if you were emailing a patient or did something and it went to the wrong person? Just protect yourself, put that into your email signature and it helps you. Redirections. Now, this is technical. So again, you may have to watch this quite slowly in the future. We're aware that you may have multiple pharmacy shared accounts. So you may have a legacy one, a new one. When you responded to us, you've asked us, could you use this one, not that one? You can set up NHSmail to redirect from one address to another. If there's one that you monitor more than the other and you want to do that, this just tells you how. So again, you go to settings, you go to rules, you click on add a new rule. You then type a name of the rule. I've put it as redirection of emails. You then click on add a condition. And I'm doing this condition that applies to all messages, so everything that comes in to this email address. And then you can click to say, what do you want to do with it? So we select an action and I put redirect to. And then you type in the email address you want it redirect to. Then you click on add another action. Then you click delete. So the aim here is that any email to an email address that you're not monitoring, you can set it to redirect it to the other email address and then delete the email so it doesn't fill up that email box of the email address that you're not managing. And then when you created that rule, you click save. And there you have it. You then see the rule that's created. There's again a toggle switch. You can toggle it on and off. If you created such a rule, first of all, once you do it, please send a test email to your old email address or things to check it's working correctly. Put an auto reply message on that unused email account. Put an auto reply like we just showed saying this email address is no longer in use. Please use this other email address. We're redirecting the email for you. Still log in occasionally to that email address to check is it going okay. And consider in the longer term, do you need to deactivate other email addresses that you're not using? So I know there's been that move to move all the pharmacies to that standardized approach of email address. If you've got legacy email addresses that you still use, this could be an approach that helps you manage that whole approach of how you manage all those different accounts. there are risks. You've got to make sure you set this up. You've got to make sure you test it carefully. So I just want to really emphasize that. You can contact the NHSmail help desk if you need support as well. Junk email. There's a risk that emails incorrectly going to junk. You've got to just check your junk folder. Again, if you look at this, if you go to the settings page, email, junk email, you might want to add all the email addresses of Ealing GP practices to your safe sender list so that your account knows that these are safe, that they shouldn't go into your junk folder. So that could be a useful step. We have already sent you out a spreadsheet of all our practices' email addresses, if that helps you. It's also worth thinking about adding your, the GP practices or other ones, other major contacts to your contact list. It just protects the fact that it doesn't go into junk, and also means that it's easy for you to find their contact details as well. And finally, just a really small cosmetic step. When you log into that portal, if you click on your name on top of the right, you can change your photograph. It could be good for your pharmacist to put a logo or put a photo of your, whatever you want to do. And that is shown. So, the practices, when they see emails coming in, it can sometimes make it even clearer about your identity. So that's just a quick whistle stop of some NHSmail tips and resources. So you've seen that web page, you've seen a couple of examples here. I'm going to conclude, but just emphasize that top one again. We really need to get your NHSmail address correct. We've done this work now, but if after this webinar, as a pharmacist, you're thinking about your options, you change it, you've just got to communicate your changes to us. Right, now I promised us a whistle stop in half an hour, so it's like about half an hour. So I know that pace is really fast. Now, from my perspective, I've got as much time as you want. So I'm going to, at this stage, open up to questions, queries. This space is now yours. I'll also stop sharing as well, so that helps. Okay, so where do people want to start? Is there any views or thoughts about what people have seen? Michael, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm off now. Yeah, I just wanted to remind pharmacies that they should read the service specification for the CPCS service, of course, and also to remember that this is a constant service, for when the pharmacy is open, except for such times as you mentioned, where there is something unforeseen that has happened and you have to take yourself off the list to receive referrals. It's not designed to be an on-off service where patients may be referred and they go to the pharmacy and nobody knows anything about it. Nobody can access the shared NHS mailbox. When you sign up to the service, you're signing up to provide it as a constant service. I know that seems a bit obvious, but it is meant to be a constant service, and patients will expect to receive the advice or sale or both when it's promised and as the service promises to be delivered. So I just wanted to put that caveat in. So always make sure that there is somebody who can at the pharmacy who has access to the shared mailbox, and also arrange an alert, as you have suggested, on an alternative device that can also redirect the email, possibly. But the key issue is making sure that there are people at all times in the pharmacy that have access to the shared mailbox, not just for this service, but possibly for other services, and also communications from both the NHS and NHS BSA. It's very easy to miss an important communication.
So Mike, I think you said a really, really important point. I mean, I hope everyone can understand from this. as a CCG team, it's a bit awkward to talk too much about the contract with CPS because we're not managing that directly. But yes, putting aside the contractual element, it just wouldn't work really, would it? As an on-off effect, because the receptionist would think, oh God, is it working this day? Is it not working? They would lose confidence. They wouldn't know what they're doing, and they would just not make referrals. So it has to be an permanently on type service, apart from those real, hopefully rare occasions where something has happened that you just can't offer a service that day. The bit that I would emphasize, which I kind of mentioned a little bit in the email bit, which is that when you look at these toolkit and the specification, it does say you must check your NHSmail at the beginning and the end of the day. It's quite explicit in that terms, which is why even in the auto reply message, I suggested that you've got to mention that in your auto reply that you are committing to that, so that if you've got a referral, that at least before you shut up for the day, you've just checked if there's any referral that's come through. So yeah, totally agree with that. Are there any other questions or? I mean, well, from my perspective, this is great. No questions means either I've done a great or a bad job. But I mean, if we haven't got any tons of questions, would it be useful to hear from people that are using this service? So I know that we've got Sanjay here who is. We've got Sunil who's got a question. Sunil, do you want to do your question first, or?
Yeah, I think Sanjay replied in the chat that he was going to respond to my question in the chat anyway with regards to referrals. So I know that I'm at Walker's Pharmacy, by the way, and head up Acton PCN. So we've had a few referrals come through from one of the local surgeries through the Sonar platform. So I just wanted to see, should they stop doing that, and should they just use this one?
What actually happened is we're aware that some practices were contacted by Sonar directly, and they weren't told about any other plans, and they thought that was the only option. We're also aware from some emails that they wasn't made clear that there's a future cost potentially. So like I said in the slide, there's obviously a free trial offered by Sonar. What I can feedback is that some of the practices that already started to do that, when they saw this method, they actually asked to go back to NHSmail, particularly at this stage. So we have reached out to the, I think it's particularly one network, but that's another reason why it was important for us to make a clear process and start communicating it, because we've only really looked at this in terms of mobilisation from December, and some of this happened pre-December when they were contacted. What I do think is we've also had some PCN and stuff say, well, pharma outcomes. So you can see the challenges that we want to avoid a receptionist having to think, well, I've got to use pharma outcomes and Sonar and SystmOne. It would just not, it would not be just not be viable. Yeah,
of course. I mean, it's just I get that this is designed to make it as easy as possible for the GP practice.
And I'm really glad that you can see that, because I know that it's really difficult. I hope Usha doesn't mind asking. I did pop down to a pharmacy to see it from a pharmacy end. I completely get why you'd want it from on your platform, but hopefully today's walkthrough, seeing it from the GP end, would explain why that logic about trying to make it easy for that receptionist to get going. But the longer,
it's difficult enough for like pharmacies to juggle 8 to 9 different platforms for everything that they do. But obviously, I get that.
I'm really glad
made as easy as possible for the GPs as well.
Okay,
otherwise it won't happen.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. That you understand that. And just and I'm going to campaign for the receptionists, because I honestly think that they get a really hard job, and no one know. They are juggling lots of platforms. They have to log into a transport booking platform. They have to log into chasing pathologies, and there's multiple platforms. So it's just they've already got a hard ask. Okay, so Sanjay, are you happy to say some thoughts about your experiences, or?
Thank you, Shankar. Very insightful, and really useful to hear it from the GP point of view as well, and what's going to work for GP, because this is definitely a collaboration and a partnership that we need to work on. And really, if it works for one side and not for the other side, okay, it's not going to last, and it will fall down. So it's important we understand each other's sides really well. We've been using the GP CPCS referral since February last year, so we're nearly a year on. Okay, and as have a number of pharmacies in our area with a number of different GP practices. So we've got several GP practices, several pharmacies in our areas that have been doing this. Okay, they've been doing the NHSmail method, and it works really well. Of course, at the beginning you have to get used to it. You have to remember to check onto your shared mail and so on and so forth. Okay, I think from a pharmacy point of view, the bit that we haven't talked about today, which might be useful for people to know, because I think when we first did it, this is the bit that our pharmacists needed to grapple with as well, which was, look, you get the email in, you print off the Word document, you put it into a tray, and you should be checking your NHS shared mail at least 3 times a day. We do it hourly, and we get quite a few of these through now, so it's important we do it regularly. Once we get those through, the pharmacist screens it and usually phones the patient. Okay, so actually sometimes the patient arrives before we've picked it up from the email, but more often than not, the patient would have rang the surgery rather than visited the surgery, and will be waiting for us, or would not have set off to come and see us. We'll ring them, we'll discuss the condition, and sometimes we're able to give general advice, resolve the problem over the phone, and that's the end of it. Other times we would have to invite the patient in to do a examination, or to pick up a medication, or to get a prescription organised, or something else, or refer back to the surgery. So that's how we generally tend to do it. Okay. Once it's complete, we scribble some notes onto the bit of paper, and then we do 2 things. One is we ping back to the surgery that the patient has been contacted or spoken to, or to come to the pharmacy and got the following treatment, and then the piece of paper goes into our system ready for uploading onto Sonar. So when you go onto Sonar, this won't be there, and you can add in the same way as we get, in the same section where we get the ones from NHS 111, you can add or start a new GP CPCS. You load it up. You have to do a few extra steps, which is put in the patient information and so on. You write down what they're referred for and what the outcome was, and then you complete it. And that gets added to your completed CPCS for the month, the same way as NHS 111s do. And at the end of the month, when you go onto MYS, into the CPCS section, there'll be 111, urgent prescriptions, and GP referrals will all be on there. You check the quantities match up. You do need to check carefully the quantities, because sometimes for various IT issues, as you'll know with MYS, sometimes some stuff don't transfer across, like flu and stuff. So do double check that carefully, okay? And then you just press submit and claim, and the payment comes on your FB34C statement on page 2 in the same section as a normal GP CPCS, a normal CPCS has come. And there's not much more to it than that. A little bit of admin on paperwork side and stuff, but what we found was actually, we thought actually it was worth us taking that little bit extra to do it at our end, because if we made it simple for the receptionist at the surgery, who are very busy, we were confident we'll get more referrals and more patients seen faster. And actually, that definitely worked out for us.
That's really helpful. And then Sanjay, I mean, it's useful. Can you share? Is there any experiences that of one time where it didn't go so well? So I've just been like, we need to obviously show the like either, or was there a case where you got referred that didn't go so well, or there's some learning for both a practice and the pharmacist? Without going into too much detail.
Yeah, because we have a range of pharmacists do it. Yeah. I probably want to get some of my pharmacists that do this day in, day out, rather than myself, okay, to answer this question, okay? But I can tell you this, my pharmacists in the whole year have never come to me and said to me, there's been a problem, right? They've always been able to pick up the phone and talk to the surgery. I think one thing we didn't talk about here today was the passback line. So each surgery has a healthcare professional only passback phone number line. So you can dial straight through, you get answers straight away. You don't have to go through the whole queuing thing that patients have to go through and all that sort of stuff. So we've got our surgery is near to our pharmacy, where we get most of our referrals from. We've got the passback line. We use the NHSmail back to them as well, and we get instant responses back from them on the stuff that we need. So whenever we do have any of these little slight issues or any trickies, okay, we do just contact the surgery. I think the other thing that we do is that we give our surgery a bespoke weekly performance report. So we drop a note back to the surgery every week with how many referrals we've got, which reception staff were sending the referrals, so the practice manager knows who's actively referring and who's not out of their team, who's creating GP appointments when they don't need to, and we also talk about the conditions as well, so they know what sorts of conditions are coming through regularly as well. So our practice manager really loves that, She uses that as a tool to engage her reception team, and that's definitely helped snowball the number of referrals we get. You know, out of everything, you get back what you put in. So these are all extra steps, extra things that we've been doing. But we've been delighted with the response and the level of partnership with our local surgery.
Okay, that's really, really helpful. Sorry, I'm just looking at if there's any other questions. Wait a sec, I'm going through.
There's one other, which is, can patients be informed that the pharmacy is busy? They might have to wait until the pharmacy is free. But I think you could put that in the automatic reply, couldn't you?
Yeah. So first of all, if you're having a really bad day, you can do that. But remember, the reception is going to say same day. So just generally, they're not going to be exactly precise on the timing. Same day. What I don't think we can manage is that the patient could obviously just walk into your pharmacist. They could phone you. You know, it's difficult to micromanage exactly how that happens, but I think you would, you know, if you were busy, I mean, you'd have to obviously manage it directly with the patient. So although, like what Sanjay said, that usually, you know, you're contacting the patient and calling them, there's obviously a chance that the patient walks in and says, look, my GP's referred you. There's also a chance that, you know, a patient doesn't make it completely clear that they, when they come in, you know, that they're being referred in. And that's where, you know, where Sanjay's point about keeping an eye on that NHSmail box, seeing the forms as they come in, can help, you know, reduce, you know, that lack of clarity. But I think generally, you know, the patient may not use the word CPCS, but they may say, I've been referred and done this, and it is just useful to just a sense check. And maybe your front team's thinking, oh, do I just check the name? Is this a person that's actually been referred through CPCS?
Yeah, so if you print them off and phone the patients, that eliminates the vast majority of that.
Yeah.
And then also, as you print them off, you let the front team know that if this patient comes in or someone comes in for this, you need to call me.
Yeah. No, I totally see that as being the path. Okay. So what Sanjay said about the bypass numbers, yep, I definitely should have emphasised that. We did email all of you. So Jane and Sarah, you know, we collated the practices of bypass phone numbers and their email addresses. We have emailed that out. So again, if you haven't received it or you're not sure where it is, just contact us and we can resend it to you. On the referral form, actually, there's something called MyDOS across London. So, you know, obviously you're using this for one-on-one online referrals. So you may get referrals from any practice. So it would be useful to think about getting your own access to MyDOS, because then you can look up bypass numbers and email addresses for any practice in London beyond just Ealing. Because obviously this is an Ealing-centric discussion. I can say that Hounslow's definitely following exactly the same process as us at this stage, and the other boroughs in North West London probably are at different stages of thinking through what they're going to do. So you know, there's a chance that all 8 do this, or at least as an interim step before we lock down any future IT platform.
I think one other thing that's worth at the outset, so from this meeting forward, I would really recommend that the pharmacists speak to their local practice manager and say, look, you guys had a webinar from Shankar and the team about the CPCS service. Have you done your training with your receptionist? When are you going live? Can you send us one test patient and we can confirm it's gone back and we can ping back to you and so on? And can we have weekly catch-ups to see how the service is working? That initial bit of sort of hand-holding of each other and extra communication will help get the service off the ground. Otherwise, what can if you don't do that within the next week or two, what can happen? It can be just another webinar that we attended and they attended, and nothing changes.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. So, you know, like when we said the slides, you're absolutely right, Sanjay. So we do one step with them, we do one step with you, and then actually doesn't do it. So the conversation has to keep carrying on. But the groundwork is now done, and it might even be that a practice says to you, look, I don't know anything what you're talking about, and you know the slide pack that we're sharing, you could give them back, show them, well, look, this is slides that we got, and on that slide pack I've even got that link for the GP webinar. Finn is also planning for us to do another session again with our practices, trying to just get as many receptionists on the call that time. So we're definitely going to be doing other events to repeat it and refresh it. So yeah, so really that whole slide about engagement, that we continue the discussion at both ends so that there's traction and we move forward. Sanil, I'm conscious that your hand's up. I don't know if we've covered. Is it? Yep. Is there?
No, covered pretty much everything. Okay. I think some of the stuff that Sanjay came up with was really good. Definitely be great to just contact all of our local GP surgeries, and great that you guys have got that. The bypass numbers are working clearly from what Sanjay's saying, so that's really useful as well, and making sure that they're working within each of the PCNs, and good information about the referrals. Is there any plans within the CCG to look at things like I've forgotten what it's called now again, but the minor ailment service, sorry, because I think that would be really, really good in terms of helping out patients, number one, who are getting referred through this service, and to stop them having to go back to the GP when a lot of them can be dealt with at the pharmacy.
So obviously you know that in Ealing we used to have a minor ailments scheme, and it was decommissioned a couple of years ago, and there's a variety of reasons for that. Partly even the referral process, and lots of it in the admin process. At this point in time for Ealing Borough, we're now part of an eight CCGs have come together. We're part of a single North West London CCG. So I imagine any revisiting of that would happen at an 8 borough CCG level discussion, and right now I'm not aware that it is a priority or something that's been looked at. I don't know if Sarah and the team would add or correct if anything I'm saying sounds wrong, but yeah, I think at this point it's unlikely. Sorry, and before I jump to another question, is we also talk about engagement. It's still a really busy time at both ends, at general practice end, and I imagine at your end too. So I'm not saying that's right, but when we talk about mobilisation, it means that even if you find that a neighbouring practice or your neighbouring GP practice is not sort of responding or engaging, don't give up. Please just continue the conversation. Alert us, and it may be just about the time is not exactly right for that particular practice. And you can say the same thing for the CCG. Right now, the medicines teams are really prioritising the COVID vaccinations. So I don't imagine the minor ailment scheme is the top priority at this moment in time. Okay, don't know if there's any more questions. If not, the last thing I was going to say is, at the beginning, obviously there was about the contractual elements of CPCS, and we did talk about, Michael talked about the need for you to keep it on. We talked about some of the service delivery. Would it be helpful for any final sort of contractual queries or development for maybe pharmacies who don't know this, and that maybe Michael or Sanjay or anyone else can help answer? Michael, are there any sorry, listen, I keep as well. Is there any resources or things that is there any way we could point people to?
For this whole CPCS service, it's been an established service that pharmacies have had for 2-3 years, been working well with NHS 111 referrals. So most of us know how to use the service. On the PSNC website, there's a whole section on there all about the service and the GP-led service. There's the toolkit that you referred to, that we've got the service level specification. Also on CPPE website, there's a section on there which has got about 20 different CPPE packages, all about clinical and other related matters to this service, which will help you deliver the service well. And of course, there's the Royal Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain 4-hour 2-hour training sessions to upskill your clinic as well. There's a whole range of training resources out there. But one thing that I would say, is that actually we don't often need to make this complicated. Most of the patients that come and most of the referrals you get are no different to those patients that choose not to ring the surgery and pop in and say to us, you know what, the GP is really busy, I can't get through. I thought I'll come and ask you first. I've got this problem on my back, or I've got a burning sensation when I'm going for a wee, or whatever it might be that they got. We get all of these patients every day coming in by themselves, and we get them ringing the surgeries, and this gives the surgeries an opportunity to send them to us with a coordinated joint up service. It's nothing new.
Okay, Vasinda, I think you're on mute.
Just wanted to say that we at the LPC are there to help you. For all the community pharmacists who haven't got started, they will start getting referrals. If there's any issue whatsoever where they need some sort of support or guidance, please just drop us a line at the LPC, because we've been working on this with so many PCNs across the whole of North West London and 3 boroughs in North Central London. So we have a lot of experience of problems that might arise or when you're uncertain in the beginning. So we're there to help you. So just call us or email us and we'll be there for you.
Okay, so I'm conscious of time, so I think this is, from my perspective, has been a really helpful session. If there isn't, I don't know, Finn or Sarah or Jane, if there's anything else we need to pick up, but otherwise it sounds like we can close. So, okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else from my end.
Okay, so just again, a really huge thank you for your time. I know, like I said at the beginning, you've had a pretty long day and we've added to it. So just want to wish you all the best and with CPCS, and let us know how it's going and if there's things you think we need to pick up. Okay.
Thank you for organising it, Shankar, and your team. It's very, very helpful.
Thanks, Shankar.
Take care. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.